Losing your cool as a working parent? Charlotte Haggie is here today to show us how to ride the waves with grace-ish and confidence by tapping into our true identity and using proven somatic techniques to calm our nervous system. And that's going to help us to be the parent who, mostly has it all together sometimes. Hey, guess what? You can do less and still be on top of everything. The voice that says everything will just fall apart is total mind BS. Hi, I am Charlotte. I am sitting here in Cape Town, South Africa, here to talk to you about how you can actually be calm. You can be chilled, even when there is an absolute storm of chaos going on around you. I used to live a life that was frenetic, that was frantic. I had 5 jobs at one point. I was living in Zimbabwe. I had 5 jobs. I would be driving from one job to the next. And my signature move, if you will, in this way of life was that I just crashed cars all the time. And my poor husband, I think he has PTSD because as soon as he picks up the phone, if I ever phone him, I have to immediately say, it's okay, I'm okay, there's no accident, and then lead into whatever's happening. Because I was living this frantic kind of rushing, striving life. And I actually was in Zimbabwe because I was setting up a charity for orphaned and vulnerable children. And then alongside that, I had all these other jobs that were income producing, but also there was this longing for variety and adding value. And there were all these drivers that were putting me into this position. And so while I was setting up this charity, I realized that I did have to make some money. And I qualified as a personal trainer because I had been a rower at university. And I was really fascinated with our bodies and how our bodies work and what makes them well or doesn't. And in that process of personal training, I started to notice how my clients actually would come to a session and they would spend so much of the session talking about what was happening in their lives. And then it was actually quite a struggle to get them to do the exercises that I needed them to do. And so I loved it because for me, that was actually what I was really enjoying about a session. And so I started to look at what was happening there. And then my husband and I actually moved to Mozambique, and I was trying to figure out what I was going to now do with my life. And I read a letter from a client that said, thank you for being my personal trainer, but thank you for being my therapist, my coach. And I suddenly thought, this is interesting. And we then moved to South Africa. I had no children at this point, but we moved to South Africa and I qualified as a life coach. And I started to then look at how does our emotional health, our mental health, our physical health, how do they all integrate? And I did my health coaching qualification and I got a whole lot of qualifications, but my biggest teacher was having my son in 2018, because suddenly here was this child who actually demanded of me that I wasn't running around and doing all of these things. He actually was saying to me, I need you to be here with me in this moment. And it was at that point that I started to look at what did he need from me and how could I give it to him. He was having 45-minute tantrums and I was having to sit on the floor with him because I had read that it was really important that he go through this. But how did I sit present and calm in this tantrum while I had so many millions of other things to be doing? I was trying to build my business. I was doing all of these things. And I had this demand on me to be absolutely 100% present. And I wanted that for the first time in my life. I also wanted that. And I was noticing it with my clients as well. And, they needed me to be present. And if I was in a coaching session and they were going through something and I was thinking about what I was going to cook for supper, I would lose track of where we were going and that, would lose the real juice of the session. And so through that, I have started to learn about resilience and what that means for us as working parents. Please excuse me, here we are as a working parent. How can I help you, my boy?
I want to do my stop shot now.
Okay, you're going to do your shot upstairs, okay? Off you go.
I'll get them.
Sorry.
It's all
Take
good.
these upstairs then.
Can I pause you
and
for a sec?
yes.
Because I love what you're saying, but I just want to go back really quick and talk about what it does to your nervous system when you're sitting there on the floor, trying to be present for the tantrum, thinking about all the things you need to do, trying to be a good mom, trying to be a good worker. How did that impact your nervous system? Like when you're thinking back on those moments, what did it feel like?
It felt like and it was something that I knew, but it was for the first time that I started to become really aware of it. Like this, holding this volcano, like I really wanted to be here, but there was all of this volcanic eruption waiting to explode. And I knew that I didn't want to explode all over him, but the frustration and the temptation also to be drawn away. And I now I kind of recognize that as the fight or flight. Like I'm in fight or flight here. And also what I would notice was how after that experience, I was absolutely exhausted. And that's what I see for us, is that we are in fight or flight mode all the time. When we were 2000 years ago, we were going out and we came across a tiger in our path, and we had heard that that tiger was dangerous, or we'd experienced that that tiger was dangerous. And so we fight. I'm going to fight it. I'm going to flee it, or I'm going to freeze from it. And we started that stress response cycle. And we then got back safe to our village and we were able to move out of it. Today, we're in this fight or flight all the time. And it's absolutely exhausting. And so we can't understand why at the end of the day we collapse on the sofa, or we wake up in the morning and we're still exhausted. And I believe that's because we're living in these emotional states that are draining. We've got cortisol pumping through our systems. We have, our adrenaline's pumping, our blood's being pulled from our digestive system to the extremities to get ready to fight or flight. And we never go back into that neutral. We never go back into that calm state in order to face the next tiger, if you will.
And the reality for some of us is that our children are the tiger.
Absolutely.
I know for me, I had a special needs child who was very, violent and would have huge outbursts. And so I would spend time tippy-toeing around him. And looking back on it, I realized that he was the tiger and I could never get away from him because I needed to be there. I needed to be present. I needed to be a good mom. So can you help us understand, as the people watching this, how do we move out of that? If we're in this fight or flight all of the time, people need us, we're being pulled in multiple directions, we're trying to have multiple facets of ourselves. Like I want to be a good mom, but I've got other interests. I have a job, I want to be more than just mom. How can you use techniques to move yourself into a place where you're not feeling so overwhelmed all the time?
In the moment, there are techniques that we can do. And I would say they're really useful only once we've become aware of what is it that the threat really. Because I mean, I don't know, you will all have noticed how something can cause you a huge amount of stress or anxiety, and someone else can look at that same situation and say, well, what's the problem? And so what is it that's underneath that feeling, or underneath what's going on for us? There's a belief. There's the belief that that tiger is dangerous. That tiger, when we were a baby, was not dangerous. We would see it and we would say, oh, beautiful tiger. But then we had the experience, or we were told, don't go near it, it's dangerous. And so we have this underpinning of that experience, of that fight or flight, which is the belief of the situation we're in. So I think as parents, we have this huge pressure on ourselves to do everything right. And we want to do the best for our children. And we have a belief about ourselves in relation to our children I think for a lot of us, we weren't allowed to have our emotions. Our parents found it incredibly difficult. My parents found it incredibly difficult to let us have our emotions or to know how to engage with our emotions. And I think, we are so privileged to have so much more information about that. But it is learning how to self-regulate. Underneath that is, first of all, looking at what is the thought, what is the belief that I have around what's going on here that is causing me to find this so incredibly difficult. I coached a wonderful woman the other day, and she was saying, I really want to be present with my children when they're playing Lego, but the more that they're like, Mummy, play with me, the more I get so angry. And we dug a little deeper, and underneath it all was the belief that if she wasn't cleaning up her house, doing the chores, doing the laundry, that she was lazy and she wasn't achieving. And I really think when you can get to the bottom of that, and then you can sit there with your children actually knowing that you're adding value. Or, I mean, I have had the most wonderful times where I've sat with my son in the supermarket and he has been absolutely losing it. And I've been able to sit there with him with the belief that I am a good mum who's helping my child go through something, rather than the belief that all these people are judging me. Oh my gosh, they're all looking at me in a certain way. And the freedom to actually give my child what he needs to build his resilience, because I know that I am doing the right thing by him. And actually, what all of these people staring at me think doesn't really matter.
Ooh, I love that. I've got tingles. And so for me, I call this mind BS. That's the name of my company, all of that stuff. But what I'm loving about what you're talking about is that we have mind BS about everything, right? You have, like, your client had that underlying belief that if her house is not clean, she's lazy. But then we also have the underlying belief that if we're not present with our child, we're a bad mom, and so all of these underlying beliefs conflict. So how do you help your clients work through choosing which belief they're going to, or which value they're going to prioritize over everything else when everything is pulling them in multiple directions?
So the first thing that I do is to look at, okay, what is our identity? And I think identity is something that allows us to then choose how we show up in the world. How many people, oh, I am just a fly by the seat of my pants kind of girl. Or, oh, I'm just one of those people who has imposter syndrome. Or I'm just disorganized. Or I just don't really like to be planned. Or whatever the case may be. We have these identities that we give ourselves around these beliefs that we have. And often people know, I don't want to be like this, but I don't really know or I want to be calm, but I don't know what is in the way of that. And it's this identity. Well, I want to be calm, but I'm just an angry person. Or I want to be like this, but I'm just a reactive person. And I don't think that we are just a whatever person. I think that these things are survival strategies that we've put into place to protect ourselves from the stories that we've heard and the experiences that we've had, and we've created this being that has allowed us to survive thus far, but it's also not serving us or our children or our work. And so looking at, okay, I love Brené Brown calls them unwanted identities and wanted identities. So we look at, what do we have now, these unwanted identities, and then we start to look at, okay, what is the wanted identity that I want? Who do I want to be? How do I want to show up? And then we can start to investigate, what's in the way of this identity that I'm living in and this identity that I want to be living in? And how can I get to that point that I'm really living out the identity, standing? And I think, being resilient, I like to think of resilience as riding a surfboard, riding the waves of life. And when we know who we are, we can stand so steadfast on that surfboard. We can set boundaries. We can do the things that we need to do. We can have time for self-care. We can tell our child it's okay, I know who I am, so I can be here with you in the supermarket. It doesn't matter what anybody else is thinking or saying or whatever the case may be. Does that answer the question?
Absolutely. And what a beautiful gift that is to our children to not only have you present and have you making that choice to be with them in your values and your desired identity, but to also model for them what it means to kind of push away all of those intrusive thoughts and just stay present in what you know to be the course of action that you choose to take instead of that sort of frazzled, pulled in multiple directions. I love that. Now, one of the things that you talked about was how not having enough time is actually a lie that we tell ourselves. Tell me more about that.
Well, I know that every mother, every father feels like, oh, I just don't have. And especially now as working moms, and I still think that we're in that kind of generation where we hold so much of the household chores and thoughts and things to hold up emotional, mental, everything. And I think what happens for us in, if you think about an early morning getting ready for school, and you're making breakfast and a child comes in, you've got a deadline that day and you're already feeling a bit nervous about it. A child comes in, they say, I can't find my shoes. You feel the volcano, getting ready to erupt. And then another one says, I didn't want this for breakfast. And so you're like, eventually, "Ah, just eat what you've got, and why can't you find your shoes?" And you end up spilling the milk, and then you have to spend the time cleaning up the milk, and now the child's crying and you have to sit with them for 10 minutes repairing the relationship or not, and then you go away feeling guilty, and then because you're feeling guilty you can't actually focus on the work that you're supposed to be doing, so then it takes you 3 hours longer, and then you've got to the car and you've realized you've left your phone inside and you have to go back inside. And when we're in that fight or flight state, we don't have access to our prefrontal cortex. We've become toddlers ourselves. So actually being organized, getting things done, being focused, not being distracted. Distraction is that flight. Oh, this is really feeling uncomfortable, so I'm going to go and do something else over there. We end up wasting so much time. And I think that when we are able to emotionally self-regulate, when we are able to stay calm or to stay at ease, even when all of this stuff is happening at us, we can respond. You can say, well, that's what I made you for breakfast. If you don't want to have it, that's perfectly fine, but that's what I made you. And, maybe you do know where the school shoes are and you can remember because you're not in a state of fight or flight or whatever so you can get to work, you can focus, you can not be distracted, and you can really get more done. You can meet other people's needs in a much more efficient, effective way. And suddenly you find, I mean, sometimes I find myself, I'm like, oh, not all, and I'm not in any by any means perfect, but every now and again I find myself thinking, what should I do now? I mean, I've got this little bit of extra time. And it's because I've built up my capacity to be resilient to the stresses of life, to the circumstances around me. And I now have the choice. How do I step out into my day? How do I prioritize? What am I going to do today? How do I respond to my child so that he doesn't need more and more? And the more we build up those mental muscles, the more we are able to manage ourselves, own our roles as mother, as parent, as manager, or in the workplace, as spouse, even in the supermarket, be able to smile at someone, even when you're having a bad day. It just changes the whole way that we show up in the world, and suddenly we have more time.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. So back to the somatic part of it. Do you have any techniques that you want to share with other parents who can, in that moment of having the tantrum in the grocery store where everyone's looking at them and they have made the conscious decision, no, I know what I want to do. I want to, work on his emotional well-being. I'm going to stay here, but they still feel the judgment. They still feel their, body elevating and their stress levels elevating. what can they do in that moment to help them to regulate back down and build that resilience so they can get through that moment in alignment with the identity that they want to present?
So this is something that you can practice all day. We are so used to breathing in this kind of panicked, chaotic way. It's just how we breathe as we go through this crazy life. And I love the acronym BREATHE. And it stands for breathe rhythmically, evenly, and through the heart every day. And breath, people are breath work, take nice deep breaths. And there are 12 elements of breath. And yes, deep breath is somewhere down there, but smooth rhythmic breathing. So breathing in for 4 counts and out for 4 counts, or in for 4, out for 5, whatever works for you, but keeping it rhythmic and keeping it smooth. And then imagining that breath coming in and out of your heart. So breathing rhythmically and evenly through the heart every day. This is something that you can do in the moment when you're having a conversation. Somebody's saying something to you and you can feel that it's causing that reaction in your body. Okay, well, while you talk, I'm going to breathe rhythmically, evenly, and I'm going to breathe as if I'm breathing in and out of my heart. Our heart is where positive emotions come from. That idea of I love you with all my heart. Or, he played that football match with all his heart. We feel those positive emotions out of our heart. So when we turn our attention away from the chaos and the kind of anxiety or whatever might be going on in our bodies, what this does is it brings our heart rate pattern back into a coherent heart rate pattern rather than a chaotic heart rate pattern. And that then switches that brain back on so that we can actually then start to choose how we respond. Oh, I can actually be logical. I can be an adult. I don't need to be the toddler in this instance. And also, what I love is the idea that our heart rate pattern reaches a meter outside of our bodies. So when you are calm, you think about a mum who holds the baby, that baby does not know how to regulate. So that mum holds that baby, and that mum is calm. As soon as the mum starts to get a little bit frantic herself, the baby also starts to get more frantic because the rhythm of the mum's heart, the pattern of the mum's heart is reaching outside her body. And so if we know, I find that information helps such a lot. If I can get myself to the point that I'm calm, I can help this little boy bring himself to the point that he is calm. He doesn't need to do the breathing or anything. I can do it for him. And just the pattern of my heart will support his regulation.
Wow, that is beautiful. I love that idea. And I also love the co-regulation aspect. And some of you might be able to see my dog in my background. But yes, being able to hug and be close to an animal really, really can help as well. All right, so you help parents become more resilient. Can you tell us a little bit more about how they can reach you and get access to this amazing training?
Yes, absolutely. So one way to find out if I am the right person to support you in this is to come and have a 30-minute free resilience audit with me, where we will talk about what is happening in your life, how resilient are you in terms of how do you respond to stress, how are you coping, how are you managing, what are the things, what are the techniques that you are using or not using, what are the activities or actions that you are doing or not doing that you want to make changes in? And then we can look at what would be a plan for you to move forward, whether it is me just offering you some ways forward, whether it is looking at my 6-month group coaching program, which may support it. It may not. Not everybody is a great fit. So the audit itself is just a 30-minute session with me to look at what's happening for you, and then we take it further if it works for that person or not.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. It's a beautiful, gentle way to sort of ease into a relationship with somebody to see if it's a right fit. Perfect. So thank you so much for being with us today, Charlotte. As we sign off, is there any last words you'd like to share with the audience?
I think that what I want to say is that parenting doesn't have to be this struggle. I really, through all the people that I've worked with and the mums that I engage with in the parking lot and the dads, it feels like this kind of heaviness and almost it's like when they move out, it will be easier. And my mission is to help parents find joy in this incredible season. And I think also for me, it is an intergenerational mission. As you were saying, the impact that we can have on our children and how they step out into this world that is now requiring more and more resilience of them. We have this incredible capacity to gift them with the ability to stand firm in amongst the chaos of the world. And so I just really want parents to know that it is feasible. And when you do the work, you can have this incredible relationship with your children. You can have success at work. You can have an incredible relationship with yourself. And it really is such a gift.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much and have a lovely day.
Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful. Bye.
My life is a total B word. Balanced. Subscribe below and let's see if your life can be the same.